What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode in Season 5 of The Black Experience. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone is doing well. I hope everyone had an amazing summer as we are in fall season now. We are in the month of October and we are rolling with The Black Experience. And today, y'all, actually, before I even start, thank you so much to everyone that supported me along this journey. It's been 2 years. This month marks 2 years from the start of my journey with this podcast. And so for everyone that stuck through it all, thank you so much for your support. For any new viewers and listeners, welcome to the journey. Welcome to the Black Experience. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Today, y'all, I have a very, very special guest with me today. I have someone who is a videographer. He's a web content producer. He's also a video editor. He has a lot of things going on, and he has a lot of things to shout out that we're going to get into. So let's put our hands together, and let's bring up my good friend, Mr. Gary Washington.
Hey, thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man.
So how's it going?
Good.
All
Good
right.
so far, man. I just drove up from the parents' place in Seattle, so
Cool.
no traffic, no nothing. Beautiful, sunny day, sunny Sunday afternoon.
Oh, that's a good drive, man, right
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Absolutely. How's your day been?
Just waking up, man, really. Just got some coffee in me, and this will be a big part of it, and then I'll be back to postering and editing, really, you know. So that's like the bulk of my life right now.
Yeah. Would you say you're more a morning person or afternoon or late night person?
I'm definitely a morning person. My mornings start about 6:30 in the morning, and I hit the gym. And if I don't go to the gym, I just kind of stumble through the day, you know, because I think you just have to jumpstart the fat or something, you know what I mean? Like, and get the
100%.
blood going, because I feel like my brain works a little bit better. As a matter of fact, I'm actually kicking myself for not doing a little bit of working out before I got here, you know what I'm saying? I want to put forth my best self, as you would say.
Of course, of course. No, my cousin has been getting on me to make sure that I stick with my morning routine because, you know, wake up, make my bed, and then I'm like, okay, I'll do my push-ups, my sit-ups, plank, and then I have a rowing machine in the garage. So I'm like, I got to make sure to hit that, but I got to take rest days too because I'm like, should I hit it all 7 days? Nah.
Rest days are super important, man. I'm 46. I'll be 47 this month, and I've dropped from 5 days a week to 4 days a week in the gym because I realized that, like, my body actually needs time to heal, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that rest is almost as important as getting the exercise in a way. I mean, not overdoing rest, of course, but that being said, you know, you have to let your body rest in order to heal and become its stronger version of itself, and in my opinion, at least, you know.
I appreciate you saying that because I gotta drill that in my mind for this week because being a young buck, I'm just always just trying to move,
Right.
you know, and I gotta just tell myself to chill sometimes, you know.
Do you partake in caffeine?
I actually don't like coffee.
Well, that's good. That's good, because that's, you know, when you're older, you just end up on caffeine for the whole week. Oh, everything's got to get done.
All jittery and everything.
Right. And then you sleep, hit it again, and it's just a never-ending process. And then
Right.
you know it's nasty, man. So
Yeah.
I think you're in a good place right now if you just continue to, like your cousin said, to keep working out in the morning and just remember to give yourself rest, man, because you'll be no good to anybody if you don't take care of yourself. Right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying? So,
Absolutely. Health is wealth. So
for sure.
yeah. Well, Gary, thank you again so much for hopping on the podcast. This is an honor. You know, we've known each other for, I want to say, several months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right before the Juneteenth event, because I know we were kind of tabling, me and Eric.
Yeah.
And then we had a chat there, but we met before that, I believe.
Yes. That's when I so the organization you're part with, Brother to Brother.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Brother to Brothers. One of my good friends is on there and asked me to come there, and I also am on the board at the Pickford Film Center, and one of our big missions right now is diversifying our audience, and that's like. Pickford means well, but we've been just kind of stepping it up, and it was just a great opportunity to have the black community come for Juneteenth, as opposed to just theoretical allyship and a bunch of like white people nodding at the screen. It's like, well, let's mingle and become actual community as opposed to, you know, because how do I put this? It's let's say you're in the South, the population demographic is skewed, and folks live next to each other.
Right.
Where I feel like in Bellingham, where it's like a 2.8 black population?
1.3, 1.4%.
Yeah, okay, so it's actually dropped, which is, wow. But there's a lot of what I like to call theoretical allyship. And it's like, oh, your allyship looks good on paper, but you don't actually interact with any people of color. You know what I'm saying? So, like, our goal is to diversify our audience so that they can interact with a larger community as a whole. You know what I mean? And that doesn't just include the black community. It includes pretty much any marginalized community,
Right.
whether it's POC or LGBTQ or income and socioeconomic stuff. So it's just like when you create a space for the community, it's for the entire community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, I digress.
No, I love that. I love that vision. How about we start with a little bit with your background information, if you want to tell the audience a little bit where you come from, and then what that journey looked like coming up to Bellingham.
Okay, yeah. So I went to high school and I was raised primarily in South Seattle, but my family, my mother is from the Philippines and my father is from Pensacola, Florida, and I spent a lot of summers growing up and a lot of school years actually in Pensacola, Florida. In a totally different environment than like Seattle. Seattle is somewhat diverse. It's a pretty more traditional black and white demographic down south.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I had that upbringing, and then after that, for a while, I decided I was a musician. I played in a band that nobody's ever heard of, and that didn't work out either. So like kind of meandering around, my wife ends up coming to college up at Western, and then I decided I wanted to go to college too. And so I started back at Wacom and finished my credits up there, transferred over to Fairhaven College, and I was in a visual communications program, but they had these filmmaking classes. And once I got my hands on a camera and then able to tell my story through editing, it was over. It was like, no, I don't want to do graphic design. No, I don't want to do audio engineering. This is what I want to do. I want to tell stories. So ever since then, I've just been telling stories for the most part here in Whatcom County, either that or getting commercials and stuff. And I'm happy to tell you that, 15, 20 years later almost, there's still the passion for the storytellers. It's not just getting the mortgage paid. It's like, I consider the stories that we're telling, and then it's like, okay, do I want to be a part of that or not? And then if I do, then we just lean in and go for it, right? And we try to research whatever subject it is that they're tackling. For instance, I'm doing some work with a company, a nonprofit out here called Children of the Setting Sun, and they cover a lot of local Native American stories and stuff, like as far as like their living situations, their culture, and stuff like that. And it's just like, wow, that's pretty great, And then other than that, I mean, as you may know, I have that film festival that we've had for 13 years, which is called Bleedingham.
Bleedingham, shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Bleedingham. Check it out. Look it up. It's pretty fun. And basically, when I was in college in my last year up at Western, Fairhaven to be exact, I'm not going to lie to you, man. I like filming, storytelling and doing fish and talking head kind of documentary stuff. But at some point I was like, when are we going to do narrative? And how are we going to teach other people to do narrative? So with the help of the Pickford Film Center, we started Bleedingham. And basically it's grown into this huge festival where filmmakers from all over the Pacific, well, now it's actually all over the world. So we have beyond Washington and then Washington State. But our primary focus is on Washington State filmmakers. And the idea is that behind the guise of horror and scary, spooky stuff, that there is this semi-competitive educational element where you can network with other filmmakers that are in the same genre and actually learn from that. And so as far as our judges, we don't just go get horror fans. We actually go get people that are in like the writing or the filmmaking, anything that has to do with that kind of industry. We want to have somebody associated with that, and then they kind of get feedback in addition to the scores, which the entrants can ask for the feedback if they want. You know what I'm saying? So it's designed to help a filmmaker become better at just telling stories, even though it's done under the fun guise of, splashing a bunch of fake blood around and stuff, right? So that's where that's at.
Absolutely. No, that is amazing.
That's
amazing.
I think you should come check it out, really.
I will check it out, especially considering Halloween's right around the corner.
Oh, yeah, man. It's a 3-day festival. The first night, over the years we grew, and we have another component called the Night Gallery. And the Night Gallery basically focuses on local vendors that do spooky kind of crafts and arts and stuff, because it's like, okay, well, we don't want to just cover filmmaking. We want to showcase other local art, and then also performance artists. So we do a lot of burlesque, drag. I think we have a ventriloquist this year, and a couple of comedians, and so that all goes on downstairs while the vending stuff goes on upstairs. And then we add film panels into the mix. And this year we have a fellow named Ryan Eston Paul covering sound design. We have 2 New York Times best-selling authors covering like writing for horror and comedy. And then we have a a brother from Vancouver. Well, he's not from Vancouver. He's from here, or North Carolina originally, but he works in Vancouver, and he's worked on films like our shows like The Last of Us, that Sabrina the Teenage Witch. He made that robot and what is it, the Robbie the Robot from the Lost in Space reboot on Netflix.
Right.
So he works a lot with Netflix and a lot of streaming channels and stuff.
Yeah.
But his IMDb list is long and his skills are high. It's just like, it's such a treat to have this brother on, man. And it's just amazing to see a black man in the industry making these effects.
Well, we're gonna unpack more of that.
Yeah, no, I'd love
that's a
to
whole
talk
nother
about
thing.
that,
But
yeah. So, Bleedingham, man. It's
Absolutely.
it's cool, man. Definitely worth checking out,
Yeah.
Especially in this season. So,
yeah.
what else you got for me?
So you talked about stories and telling stories from kind of the stories that you've heard and you've experienced and you've done. Are there any ones that like stand out that you were like, wow, this story kind of inspired me in a certain way or moved me, or it's a story I'll never forget?
After a while, there's just so many stories that you can put into that category. I feel like I end up going into like base stories. Now, as a filmmaker, it's like I kind of think about like what films got me into film and stuff like that. And they're kind of silly, man. Honestly, like there's a black director named Mario Van Peebles, and he did this movie called Posse, and it was a black cowboy movie at a time where there was no black cowboys.
Black cowboys,
and as you know, the truth about it, the West was filled with black cowboys, and there's hardly no stories for them. So like seeing this kind of representation, or seeing things where black characters go beyond the usual tropes where a white guy's written them as a runaway slave or a janitor that knows calculus and all this, like these hitting these old magical Negro tropes, anything that's not in that, and I see a dynamic character, I just consider I'm inspired by everything, really. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, that's great. And it's like, when I view stories, I view them more through the lens of like being a minority, and like how this person was placed inside this story, who they were placed there by, and what are the circumstances, and how do they vary for them as a person of color. So that leads to some interesting stuff in a lot of different genres for me. I mean, I can't really think of anything. I don't want to say that I wasn't inspired by anything. Well, I'd rather tell you I've been inspired by everything. You know what I mean? So.
And because of the inspiration from everything, you'll never run out of inspiration.
Right. So you're just constantly like...
Because it's just so broad. You're constantly looking for it and you're constantly finding it.
Right. And it's like in storytelling, it's always interesting to see how a different culture approaches it. So like, and I don't mean just like people of color. I mean, there's European stories, like for instance, European horror is a lot different than like American horror, right? Sure. And it has different nuances and stuff that are kind of based in their culture. And if you're not from their culture, you got to go Google that shit. So it's interesting to explore that, see where they're coming from, and then why is this important to them? You know what I mean? And then and it's when you ask yourself those questions, when you start paralleling that with your own experiences, and I feel like that ends up giving whatever story you're analyzing or critically looking at more value. So it's like there's always something relatable, and that's why it circles back to the man. I could name this, this, and this, but it's like. Really just everything, like I grew up on horror movies and blaxploitation flicks. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and not so much the negative ones, but you know who Jim Kelly is?
I've heard of the name.
So Jim Kelly was a brother that was very empowering in his films in blaxploitation, as opposed to like just a regular street tale. Right. He was the brother in Enter the Dragon in the Bruce Lee movie, the guy with the afro.
Oh.
And he had a series of his own films. So that was actually my hero growing up, was Jim Kelly. You know what I'm saying?
So would you say he's like a role model that you look up to?
Yeah, I would definitely say that. And as far as like filmmakers, it would be like Mario Van Peebles, Werner Herzog, and then the classics of horror like John Carpenter, Wes Craven, just people like that. You know what I mean? Not so much Ridley Scott. I mean, I appreciate what he did in the Alien franchise, but it's like he's shown himself to be, in my opinion, not an ally. So it's it kind of take him with a grain of salt. But like, I look at a lot of directors and I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of a thing. I know like if maybe you have a certain, like if you see a certain director's putting out a film, you're like, oh man, I'm gonna go see that.
What's his name? The one that put out Stanley Kubrick. Yeah. He put out the.
Yes.
Gosh, why am I blanking? The Shining.
Yeah. Now I don't want to destroy your world, man, but I'm going to. I loved The Shining until I read the book.
Was it bad?
Well, the book, I mean, The Shining is a pretty racist story. You know what I'm saying? The house is racist, the monster of the Overlook, right? And they really display that in the book. Like, you know, the house is like psychically telling, I think his name was Halloran, who was played by Scatman Crothers, who was a famous singer and poet of the time. Scatman Crothers is amazing, by the way. And if you look at the movie, this brother goes all the way up a mountain in the snow, takes a plane, walks through the door, and gets hit in the chest with an axe by Jack Nicholson, man. In the book, he's actually the one that gets the kid out and teaches the kid how to use his power because he has the Shining too. And I didn't realize that until I read the book, and then I was like, man, F Stanley Kubrick, you know what I'm saying? I was like, what is that? You just had this brother go. I mean, like, if you think about it, every scene that Scatman Crothers is in The Shining, he's traveling back to the Overlook Hotel. As soon as he walks through the door, catches an axe to the chest. And it's just like, wow, you know? Dr. Sleep rectified that. You know what I'm saying? You see, what's his name? Ethan, Obi-Wan Kenobi or whatever, as Ian McGregor, yeah. Ian McGregor is sitting there talking to his mentor through the whole thing, and then you realize his mentor is the ghost of Mr. Halloran, you know what I'm saying? So it was more book accurate, I guess, and that, I appreciate that part of it. I mean, and if you want to unpack some stuff, Stephen King, man, that guy, it's like, I don't know if he's racist or just has like a weird colorism infatuation, or at some point in his career, did somebody make him realize what he was doing, because he started using more black protagonists and stuff like that. And I can appreciate that, you know, because you have to allow room for growth with everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's it's kind of a interesting. So I don't mean to go off of topic here.
No, we can go into that. So The Shining came out in 1980. When did the book come out?
I think the book came out like probably 3 or 4 years before.
Before it.
Yeah.
Okay, and Kubrick tried to base it off that, but obviously that one part where the man catches the axe to the chest. Compared to when he's actually showing the boy his powers, that's one key difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference, actually. Yeah, because that would shift.
And I mean, but at the same time, like it's kind of like Yaphet Kotto and Alien, which is around the same time. It's like brothers are starting to get jobs, because you know the whole reason blaxploitation film rose up is because they weren't getting gigs or anything beyond stereotypical roles. I don't know if you ever seen a movie called Hollywood Shuffle. It addresses that. Oh, okay. So if you want to talk about an inspirational,
I'm going to add
director,
all these to my list, by the way.
Oh yeah, cool, very cool. Well, Robert Townsend is a brother that's made a lot of films. He made Meteor Man, The Five Heartbeats, Hollywood Shuffle, and a few other films. And he is just an amazing thing. But Hollywood Shuffle was about the black experience in Hollywood in the early '80s. And so, like, there's this classic scene where, like, this guy trains at Juilliard, has, like, all these degrees, and then when he gets to set, they put him in a jerry curl and in front of a Cadillac, and he's like, oh, no, my brother Jimmy. And then the director's like, can you block it up a little bit more? And he's just like, what the? But that was the climate of filmmaking then. Now, I'm not sure whether it's, you know, on a Hollywood level, if it's better or worse. I would like to think that it was better. But why I'm saying all this is because back in the days when Stanley Kubrick was making The Shining, you know, it's a major motion picture, very well funded, you know, in comparison to blaxploitation films. And Scatman Crothers, who played in multiple blaxploitation films, it's like they're crossing over into this line. So it's at one point, you know, they're getting their foot in the door, but at the other point, the overall story that's being given to the masses and their audience, it's not like Stanley Kubrick was like, man, I'm making this for the black community. You know what I'm saying? He's modifying the story to take away key components that switch up the vibe. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just with like race. I mean, he did it with other elements of the thing too, but it's just kind of a slap to the face, I guess, as a person of color who loves film and then like wants to make film, and in particular who loves horror. You know, it's just like, oh, that's different than the book. You know, so I don't know, man. I guess I'd have to say that, you know, things have changed since then. You know what I'm saying? And so I can acknowledge that a film is good and still acknowledge that it had problematic. Like, for instance, and I'll get off of my film horse here. My favorite movie is Aliens. But what a lot of people don't know about Aliens is Jeanette Goldstein, who played the character Vasquez, is actually a Jewish lady. But they had her, like, brown faced up and put her in spray tan stuff and then gave her a quote-unquote cholo look.
To look black?
No, to look Latino.
Okay. So
she's basically a projection of what white people thought cholos were in the 80s to me. You know what I mean? So that was kind of interesting. You know, and like if you look up like interviews that she's done about the film, she would say, you know, under the studio lights, the brown was wearing off and leaking onto the stone. It's just like it's crazy how like you would think these practices are like, you know, in our past, but they're not as far. Well, by now, yeah. But I mean, it was still happening in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? Like in a time where we would think we were more progressive and stuff. So like these are the type of things that I like to be cognizant about in storytelling. You know what I mean? So like it's like one, writing in other people's voices. Two, making sure that there's accurate representation. You know,
Absolutely.
You know, and so like let's say if I write a story about a gay person, I'm going to go to a gay community and ask a lot of questions and just make sure that I'm not projecting my ideal view of that particular person, if that makes any sense, right? And I would hope that some films do the same for us. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that's it.
Representation matters.
Representation really matters.
It really does, yeah.
And I mean, I can't complain. We've been having a lot of great stuff coming out in the past few years. Like, how do you feel about Jordan Peele, man?
I was actually going to speak on Nope. Okay. Because there was a scene in there. Have you seen Nope?
Yeah, I've seen them all.
Where he's with the horse, and then Kiki talks about. I believe it was Kiki that talked about you know how like at the start of the film,
the first riders in Hollywood,
the man riding on the horse, and he was a black man, and I had no clue.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
actually real.
I'm a big fan of Jordan Peele. Love his movies. I'm not really much into horror,
right,
or any kind of that.
And
film.
that's fair. That's fair.
Only when I'm with my friends, you know, I can watch that. But I'm a fan of him. Are you a fan?
I'm kind of in the middle of the road. I appreciate what he does for the community, but yeah, I have a few reservations. I won't get too deep into them, but I'll say the main one is I'll give you an example. So there's a horror film, a black horror film called Tales from the Hood. And it's amazing. Like, I know it sounds kind of like asinine, Tales from the Hood, but it was Spike Lee produced, and it was made by, I think the guy's name was Rusty Kundiev, if I'm pronouncing that right. And it was basically addressing a lot of issues that were with the 90s. And when you watch this film as a black person, you feel like it was made for you. And so we did recently in the Central District in Seattle at the Langston Hughes Community Center. No, it was recent, about a year ago. We did a viewing of that, of Tales from the Hood, and it was like a black cinephiles club. And we started talking, and Jordan Peele comes up, right? And, I said, well, Jordan Peele's okay, but like in my world, it's like Chappelle came out, hit stuff with a lot of funny commentary about comedy, and then when all that weird Comedy Central stuff came in, Kay and Peele came, and I felt like there's a little more, for better lack of a term, shucking and jiving going on there. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it was okay. It was fine. But it was like Get Out, I felt like kind of looked over a few nuances. Us was a better tale. And I want to really state the next point about Us. And then, Nope was great. But so when I tell this, of course, the younger generation's like, I have to disagree with you, Gary. I feel like a young gentleman gets up and goes, I feel that Jordan Peele is a genius. And, before I could even say anything, because I was about to rebuttal, a lady jumps up and says, Jordan Peele makes black movies for white people. And I'm like, that right there. You know what I'm saying? And I think so. It's important to the conversation as a whole, that I need you to feel the way I feel kind of thing. Like Get Out, a lot of people feel like that. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like the situation's a little more nuanced now than it is. And so there's another director called Little Marvin, and he does a series called Them. If you don't like horror, I recommend you don't check it out because it's like 4 or 5 times scarier than any of Jordan Peele's stuff, right? And basically what is so scary about it is, so you know what redlining is, right? Okay, so in Compton, California in the 50s, this family moves out there and they're the first black family in Compton. And it goes as well as expected, right? There's like people at their door with guns. There's like just really rude neighbors and the whole sense is there. But on top of that, the house is haunted, man. So like... and there's a demon in it. So can you imagine having to deal with racism on your front doorstep and then a supernatural presence?
You got that too.
Yeah, it's just overwhelming, right? And then his second outing was like right in the tension 3 days before the Rodney King riots. So this brother understands that when you pair these two things together and have them in these environments, you get that same feeling of dread. Like that socio-political environment mixed with the supernatural element is actually quite terrifying as a person that is directly affected by that. So I think that that's an important aspect of storytelling that Jordan Peele seems to miss out on for me. You know what I'm saying? It's like maybe he wasn't exposed to all that, in life, or was a little more far removed from it. And that's okay. That's totally fine. Because like I said, his films are great and they're important for overall conversation. But like when I'm going in to be scared, I'm probably going to look for somebody else. You know what I mean? But
And
I
there's nothing wrong with
love
that.
Nope. Don't get me wrong. I love Nope, but that Nope was great.
Yeah.
I thought Us was brilliant. And that's, before we move on, I just want to say, it is important for us to tell our stories. Yes. But what I hope for the youth is that they're able to tell any story they want. You know, I want to see the next Aliens be made by a black person. You know what I'm saying? Or the next major franchise to be made by a black person and embraced as a whole by that. Now, like I said, never lose sight of where you're from.
Sure.
Super important, right? But I don't see white dudes running around, I got to tell my story all the time. Because they seem to have some sort of lease to be able to imagine a little bigger or something sometimes. Or they get the funding to imagine a little bigger is more specific to what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? I want us to get that same kind of funding. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't want to do it at the expense of the old magical Negro, the noble savage, any of those kind of tropes, man. You know, I want that Afro future vision, Afrofuturism type vision. You know, like what is it when we look at our highest selves and beyond, that kind of stuff, man. And so
we'll get more into kind of advice for younger filmmakers and people that want to come up. I want to pivot back to kind of bring it back local to Bellingham, specifically what your experience has been here in Bellingham. You know, going after becoming an editor of a videographer and stuff. What has that been like?
Well, I have to be careful about this because my personal experience in Bellingham as like a 6'4" brother with tattoos that's not going to let you call me the N-word or let you, say the N-word with me or fetishize my culture. You know what I'm saying? There's not a lot of room for that. And, like I've been constantly surprised of how embracing the creative community is here, and it's like a little known secret, but I'm also constantly dismayed because I consistently hear of other people's experiences here. You know what I mean? Like cats of smaller stature, younger cats, and they deal with like straight up racism, they've been called the N-word, hit in the head with a bagel type. I don't know, I hear all types of stories, man. But for the most part, I would say, and I think this goes back to the beginning when I was saying the theoretical allyship, it's like, well, now it's time to put up because now we're making a movie together or now we're working on a project together. You know what I'm saying? And I haven't had too many bad experiences based on like the color of my skin in regards to that. You know what I mean? Of course I get weird looks in certain neighborhoods or, I feel kind of awkward coming into places and stuff. But I have to say, and I'm not here to like a cheerlead for Bellingham, right? But I'll say that there's a lot of people out here trying and they're trying and to do the work. But the thing is, they're so insular that they just sit around talking with each other. And that the thing that activates them is an actual interaction and a doorway to that community. And not just the black community, but like the Native community, the Latino community, LGBT community, the Asian community, you know what I'm saying? It's like, there's a lot of good people. But then again, at the same time, I try to choose to surround myself with people like that instead of like, the rednecks of Linden or whatever. So, because we know as soon as you leave Bellingham,
Two different kinds of people.
it's a whole different it's
yeah.
big white trucks and Trump flags and their chest out and, these weird conservative values, but love gangster hip hop type of thing. And it's like, I just, I can't stomach it, man. So like, I just kind of stay in my own lane, you know what I mean? And help where I can. I know what it is to be a good neighbor. I know what it is to be a good community member. But I also know what it is to create your own boundaries so that you can have the best existence possible here in Bellingham. Because it's expensive, it's strange. There's a lot of, like I said, theoretical allyship, and there's not a lot of black folks. Let's go ahead and reiterate that percentage again.
1.3%.
Exactly. So, as opposed to, being in the South and seeing actively racist folks, to here where it's a more subtle. Maybe you didn't get that gig you thought you would because they thought that your vernacular was a little too, what do they call it? Ebonics for them. But then in reality, you're probably better than whoever they hire type stuff. So I've seen a few things as far as like hiring and stuff, but in the end, they end up coming back to G, man. So I don't care. You know what I'm saying?
Would you say you've found a good support for your work though, and what you've done?
But I mean, you think about it, man. You get a horror movie thing going, then everybody knows you through that. It's kind of easy, right? Because horror is broader. You know what I'm saying? Than like any particular thing. So it's not like I have a cause that I'm championing. I'm championing something that is accessible to everybody, right? It's like, okay, we all like this. Well, the people that like that, right? So and then with the other stuff, it's just kind of like, I have to literally and honestly give them their props. A lot of the white filmmakers I meet here are pretty embracing and pretty cool. Some of them a little weird and over embracing, you know, and I'm like, no, I'm not the emperor of black people, so don't ask me my opinion about that kind of stuff, kind of thing. And it's like, I'm not your go-to guy for that. But once they get that down, it's like, there's just only the work left and the story to tell, you know? And I think that by having varied perspectives, when we tell these stories, whether it's a commercial or a like narrative or a documentary, then having, you know, different walks of life come in and add their sauce to the piece that you're putting out, it actually serves the project well. So I've had a semi-pleasant experience, and I know about Bellingham's super racist history, man. I mean, I am very aware of it. It was like the first thing I learned. Like, I tell you, when I first moved here, I saw the no Chinese beyond this point thing on the ground in Fairhaven.
Oh yes, on the way to Marine Park.
Right, and I remember being in community college and like, I'm gonna blow this wide open. They're over here with their fancy teas and their pitas and all this, you know, like you know, all the trappings of the bouginess and stuff like that. And it's just like, I'm gonna blow this. And then you look, and what I found surprising is Bellingham doesn't shy away from its history. Everything that's really messed up, and there was a lot of stuff that happened early on, and this was more so in like the early 1900s through like maybe the 70s.
Wow.
But I mean, we have a mutual friend, remember, and we were in a conversation. He said when he was a kid, Russ Whitby, you know, when he was a kid, they had to travel 4 deep to go downtown. You know, and when you hear stuff like that from people who have lived out here, that kind of just stays in the back of your head. No matter how happy, flowery, Pride, Seafest, and all this mainstream stuff, you know that, you know, somebody's got a closet with a Klan outfit in the back, because this used to be one of the biggest hotspots for Ku Klux Klan activity, man. You know, it's like they had parades up and down Main Street, man. And I actually literally know elders, ladies that are 80 years old, that said that they were at the parades and they would turn away because half the town didn't like it.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like being that close. It's just like all of my aunties and uncles were born in I'll call it a nunnery because I can't pronounce convent, right? But they were born in the back of a church, man, because of segregation. And your generation is 2-3 generations removed from that. But being 47, well, about to be 47 this month, those are my aunties, man. And my father, you know what I'm saying? None of them was born in a hospital, man. And when you remember that kind of stuff about a place, you know, you kind of you don't put up a defensiveness, but you just have an awareness.
Right.
And so I think it's valuable for anybody of color to research the history of Bellingham, as well as look at it in its current state, and then operate throughout the community. You know what I mean?
Based off of that.
Right.
history.
So like, it's not such a surprise if you hit up like 1 foot out of the city and hit into the county, and then all of a sudden everybody's an asshole, right? You know, so it's just like, that's because their grandpappy was an asshole. You know what I'm saying? And their great grandpappy was, you know, it's
absolutely.
Like generational. I don't mean to curse so much on your podcast, but it's just generations of this kind of behavior, right? I'll give you another example. Right now I'm working on a reality show for an estate shop out here. And, you know, this guy buys like stuff from dead people around here, which was predominantly white. Now, think about that. A ton of racist old memorabilia, man. You know, and he said he's come across a ton of it, man. You know what I mean? Like, even as far as to like those fake doctors that would say that the Negro's skull is shaped different than our, you know, and then they have a plaster cast of a skull that's not even human type thing. I've seen that, and I'm just like, wow, that's something. And so that's where this kind of stuff goes, you know, and it's hidden somewhere with the Sambos and the lawn jockeys and the anti-mommy, the Aunt Jemima salt shakers and shit, you know, and you're just like, who wants to keep this, man? You know what I'm saying? But it was there, and it's in their families. And when you look at these kind of observations, like I said, it's not that it's all bad. It's just that it's not all good, and you should consistently be aware of that. You know what I mean? And
Absolutely.
That's how I feel about Bellingham, man.
And how would you say, I guess, you know, and the kind of thinking I like to have is things can and will get better, hopefully.
Yeah.
As we learn from our history, and we don't forget that history, but we move on and we try to get better for the younger for my generation, generations after me. I guess if the city of Bellingham right now was listening to you, you know, what strides can the city keep making or start to make to kind of have that future be more welcoming for folks that look like us and other people?
Well, I'm actually glad you brought that up. I actually get on all of like the downtown board and the tourism. I'm consistently sending messages that we don't see enough social media or profiles of the minority businesses in the area, including Black, Latino, and Asian businesses, right? And it's like, if it fits that narrative of the yoga white lady that's doing aligning her chakras or something, they'll pull in some of that culture. But it's like, I would tell Bellingham to please continue, and don't get me wrong, man, they've actually been really good about, somebody just has to say something, man, or the behavior continue. And I think that they've been listening, and they have been elevating more stuff and showcasing more minority businesses, but it's still a drop in the bucket from where it could be. You know what I mean? It's like, you still don't hear of these places, and they've been here for like 5 years, just barely getting by. And it's like, they could definitely use the boost because they actually bring more vibrance, more diversity to the city. Everything's not the same, like post college or some restaurant entrepreneur. You get a different vibe. It's a different, for better lack of a term, it's a different flavor. You know what I'm saying? Like with the restaurants and all that kind of stuff, right? But it's super imperative that the board of the Downtown Bellingham Business Partnership, tourism, and other entities that promote coming to Bellingham stay cognizant of the minority business community and, of course, the Black business community as a whole. Because what I can say that's a really positive note is I moved here in 2003. So I've been out here for 20 years, right? Yeah. It's a lot more diverse than what it was, believe it or not. There was, I don't understand how the population dropped, so I'm still tripping off of that. And I was like, no, that's terrible. Oh my God, but it was just, when I got here, there wasn't that many brothers. There was a few locals, like Bernard was here, came out of the Navy kind of thing, you know what I'm saying? But as time has gone by, I've seen more Black focused events, more minority events, more visibility in our social media outlets and our just regular business outlets. And that's very heartening. It's like, cool, we're not there yet, but at least we know that you're not totally suppressing us from thriving. You know what I mean? So it's there. It's just, it's moving slow, I guess, but as long as it's moving, I'm a happy clown, man,
Yeah. And there's a lot of great Black businesses that you were, shouting out. And I think they have some good food spots, good places to see, good people to meet, and just to dialogue and just talk. I feel like this is the start, like you said,
just have a conversation.
I
want to shout out Battle's Kitchen because they're from New Orleans and they do a lot of soul food, and you never hear about them. They're on the edge of town. They're right. They might not even be, but a great example of, if you see them on social media, their word of mouth is insane. It's like white people everywhere. Oh my God, this food is delicious. You know what I'm saying? But you never hear about them anywhere else. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, well, why is that? And it's like, and that's the same thing. Like Bernard gets a lot of great business and does a lot of great stuff in his community and stuff. But we don't see that many showcases. Every once in a while you get a newspaper article or anything like that. But you see tons of stuff for the local coffee shop or the greenhouse or, you know what I mean? All this other, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. But what about these other components? And it's not for lack of popularity within the town itself. It's we need some boost from the leadership in the town to let the rest of the town know about these places so they can thrive. Because we're all just trying to build generational wealth, right?
Pretty much.
So it's these businesses are serving the community. They're deserving of that, and I keep a cognizant eye on it. And I'm not gonna lie, I get pretty good business myself here, but I don't advertise that much, but I have a small business called Northwest Creative Collective, which facilitates Bleedingham and does all of my editing, post-production, or producing type stuff. And yeah, it's just, it's pretty fun, but I've gone mostly through my circle, you know what I mean? Whereas not it's elevated mainstream. I don't expect anybody to put that down there, but for these brick and mortar places, I do, it's because you don't know about these places and then you end up going to Bayou on the Bay. Now, nothing's wrong with Bayou, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's you have a whole mural of Black folks singing jazz, and the whole thing is oh, this is New Orleans flavor. And that's cool. How many Black people work there? You know what I mean?
Right.
You have Black Lives Matter signs in almost every shop in town. How many Black people work there? I get that it matters in the context of you don't want police brutality and stuff, but put your money where your mouth's at.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And we can't find any Black people. Well, start looking. Just give a little bit more effort. And I don't mean to use the Pickford as an example, but with a little bit more effort as a team, everybody came up with great ideas to get people to buy in and actually approach. And it's more not so much thinking as I like to call it a ground and pound, boots on the ground kind of thing. Just like you were saying, go out with people and start a dialogue, man.
Yeah.
You know? And that's where it all starts, man. And it's once we get past that, and to be fair, the Northwest is inherently insular. Like, I mean, like people don't. You've been down south. Everybody's like, "Hey, how's it going?" You know what I'm saying?
Very passive here.
Right here, it's like,
yeah,
you know,
everyone's in their own little bubble.
right.
Pretty much.
So
yeah.
if we could get people to get out the bubble, because you know, once you go inside the bubble, you realize, oh yeah, you like a lot of stuff that I like. You know, and there's like you'll find a lot of shared interests and stuff. But it's that initial bubble.
It's that, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because of the weather or that. You know, it's just the way it is.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Gary, let's talk about your work, man. Let's talk a little bit about more of what you do. So you mentioned Bleedingham a bit, but tell the audience a little bit more, kind of what projects you're working on right now, and I guess why they should check out your work.
Okay, well, let's see. So right now, I've been in post-production for the last year for a film called Bigger, Stronger, Faster. It's actually the sequel to this film. And it's a documentary that takes place in the fitness space. And so the first one was this gentleman, Chris Bell, very cool guy. He has a brother named Mark Bell, and he had a brother named Mike Bell. And the framing of the first film was that, you know, he's very like 80s nostalgic American. I'm not going to lie. He's a very... like what you would think of as like, you know, a middle-aged white American, right? You know, and so, but you know, it's cool because we hit a lot of the same beats. I liked Rambo, I liked Rocky, I liked Hulk Hogan.
Love Rocky.
Yeah, so like, you know, he's from that era of stuff, you know, and his first film was like, all those heroes told him if you work hard, you could get the American dream and get this physique.
Right.
But in reality, all his heroes were on steroids. Then he finds out his brothers are on steroids. You know what I'm saying? So by the end of it, he's posed with this question, do I do steroids? Well, fast forward like 15 years later, and he's been on steroids for a while. He went into powerlifting and blew out his hips. And I think it might not have been from powerlifting, but his hips still got blown out. Like, you know what I'm saying? But he was... lifting big. His brother has a couple of world records for powerlifting. The Bell brothers are pretty big about this stuff, right? And so now this whole film that we're doing is about his journey from getting quote unquote jacked and tanned to training for longevity, which means, okay, I'm 51 years old. I've given myself a lot of health problems through lifting. It's so heavy. And like, what do I do? And it comes with a bunch of other stuff. Like he has a couple other films out, Leaf of Faith and Prescription Thugs, because he ended up, so one of his brothers ended up dying. His other brother, who went from a powerlifter, became more like a bodybuilder type. I mean, like and doing more running and stuff. But he's still has the Power Project podcast, which is very popular in the fitness space, like I was telling you. And their dichotomies have changed in regards to how they view fitness, right? But Chris ended up, unfortunately, in a bout of opioids, right, from the pain management stuff, right? So now he's off the opioids, but the pain is still there. So like he's been going to like I don't want to call it outlandish, because if I was in the same amount of pain, I'm pretty sure I would be down to try to say stuff. But I didn't know much about medical tourism until this film. You know what I'm saying? So like he's gone to Mexico to get stem cells, ibogaine treatments to reset nerve receptors and addictive receptors. You know what I'm saying? And it's like he's going through this gamut of things to find out what really works for him, right? And at the same time, it's kind of what the identity of what it means to be strong in America is too, from their point of view, right? Like I might not necessarily share that point of view, but it's an interesting point of view nonetheless, right? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? So he talks with fitness influencers, people about what it means to be masculine in current days and age, in a time when toxic masculinity is kind of you know, like a very popular, I don't want to call it a buzzword because it is a problem, right? Toxic masculinity can be, I mean, I was in the 90s, man. Cats were tripping, you know what I'm saying? And one of the things I love about now is like brothers are going to therapy. It's not like some thing with a stigma around it, but he explores all of that. So now we're just in the post-production, kind of cutting it down and getting it to, you know, down to the 2 hours, because we have over 40 interviews, across the country with doctors, fitness folks, mostly doctors and fitness folks, really, but it's just an interesting conversation about what it means to be an adult and like in the fitness space in America, because a lot of like, for instance, and I don't want to give too much of the movie away, but so with the rise of social media, right? But with the rise of social media, you know, back in the day when cats were doing steroids, it was like a dude at the gym, right? You got to go meet some shady guy at the gym, and either he's making it in his bathtub or he's getting it from some illicit place. Well, TRT is now, you can get it through a clinic.
What is TRT?
Testosterone replacement therapy. Okay. Which is a lot of fitness people over 40 are doing TRT. I don't do TRT. I'm kind of just a caffeine guy. You know what I mean? But so that's more common. But in addition to that, there's this alarming trend where people are sharing their steroid cycles on social media. And what does that lead to? 14-year-old kids doing steroids.
Oh, man.
And now they're sharing their stuff on social media, and it's become a monster. And now it's like, and none of this is framed. I just want to say this very clearly in case anybody sees it from my production company. None of our people are saying do this. As a matter of fact, they're like, we're proud of the social media influencers that don't do this. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? That don't share their cycle. Like, yeah, if you're going to do what you're going to do, right? But don't make it so easy that a 14-year-old kid can figure out where to get the Trenbolone in particular is a very harmful steroid that is known for giving you a lot of bulk, but also having a lot of negative impacts on the body. Like, have you ever been to the gym and just seen somebody yoked out with hella back knee and stuff? It's the stuff that gives steroids the bad name of all that. You know what I'm saying? But now there's kids taking, 14 through 16-year-old kids, and this is not like a one-off. Like, one guy's doing it and everybody's watching it.
This is multiple.
Yeah, you go on TikTok, type in trend. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And you'll see it. It's just unnaturally large kids just like, I just started a cycle. And it's because they want to compete. And like at competing, it's said, I don't know this for sure, but it's been said by many bodybuilders that at some point in bodybuilding, everybody's on steroids. You see what I'm saying? Wow. So what you have with social media is this wealth of information that's given on how to get into that zone. And kids are taking it, man. And this is before their bodies are even fully developed, before their psychological
it's fully developed. Yeah. I mean, 14 is young, man.
Yeah, man, it's super young. And I mean, like, think about your maturity level at that age, and then think about that with a ton of energy and a little bit of ego. It's, it's terrifying, really. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, but it's an ongoing thing, man. Like, I was just pulling some footage from these guys called the Trend Twins, and and then there's this like Canadian, and they're just like banging their heads against walls, and like. They say it's satire, but nah, man, you're
social media is both a curse and a blessing.
Yeah, it really is.
Honestly, what I like to say.
Exactly.
Like, it really depends on how you use it. I mean, because but it's like, it's really the adults' fault. Like, why would you put your thing out there where a 14-year-old could see that procedure and how you do it and then implement it?
Right, but then the argument also is, if they don't have that information, what if they do it wrong and just straight up kill?
That is true too.
So like. There's the conundrum, right? And it's like, and this isn't just like what the stuff my film's doing. This is just that community as a whole. Right. You know what I'm saying? But luckily that community has some leaders that are very vocal about that. Like there's a gentleman named Kenny KO that goes around saying, "Are you natty or not?" And the natty means natural, like you're not on any kind of supplements or any kind of injectable steroids and stuff. Right. And there's also Joey Swole, who is this guy who...
I know Joey Swole.
Okay, yeah. So, it's like... Reacting to videos. It's obvious he's on steroids, but you'll never see him post about that. He always posts about gym positivity.
So how can you tell if someone's on steroids or not? I guess...
I'm still figuring that out myself, because what I've learned is a lot of people that don't look like they're on steroids or testosterone replacement therapy are on it, but... Mostly you look for the bulkiest person in the gym that's breathing hard when it comes to cardio. Like this guy can lift 400 pounds but can't do 15 minutes of running. That's probably somebody on steroids. You know what I'm saying? So it's like the bulkiest cats. It's like a lot of that's where it comes back to my Kenny KO guy. Natty or not, bro? And just ask. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's like people are pretty open about it these days. It's not like it has the same stigma. And I think. Whether this is good or bad, it's oh God, sorry about that. Whether it's good or bad, the film that was the previous film to this actually kind of set that stage and took less of a stigma away from it. You know what I mean? So it's I know you can't do it in so if you see a fighter, a UFC fighter or any kind of fighter, they can't do that because it's cheating. Right. It's literally cheating. Like they interviewed Dana White, and Dana White was like, he talked a little bit at length about the strenuous drug testing processes that they have for the UFC. Yeah. Because it's cheating. It's cheating. So it's like at this point, if you're taking a performance enhancing drug to do physical combat, a combat sport that could lead to somebody losing their life, You know what I'm saying? Because the pressure of your punch is so much more. It's not there. So
not worth it.
It's like more in like I don't know, I want to say a bodybuilding space, because a lot of athletic places are pretty like, as far as like sports and all that stuff, they test pretty rigorously, you know. So it's definitely very popular in the bodybuilding space. Gotcha. And so having a glimpse of that as like a chubby dude that's living in Bellingham, right? And then like, you know, a lot of this stuff takes place in like California and other lower states. You're just like, this is insane, man. Like, it's like, it's crazy. And then I juxtaposition that with a lot of work from Children of the Setting Sun, where we're telling stories about the Native community. Yeah. And that's actually a really good balance, because it's like, this is entertaining but goes hard, and you're like, oh my God, this is like, you know, it's what are you going to do any of that stuff, Gary? No, I'm just going to do the Kirkland signature amino acids. You know what I'm saying? And then you go over here and you're talking about something that actually needs a little bit of focus on it, because this, I'm pretty sure this has a built-in audience. You know what I'm saying? Whereas, how many cats know where the Lummi Reservation's at? You know, or how many cats know the name of every tribe in the Northwest? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, and as you and I know, they have suffered just as much, if not more, than other marginalized communities out here.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. So it's like, I feel that there's something really rewarding about that, but there's also a lot of stuff rewarding, because I don't want to get this wrong. In the fitness space, and all the people that I've met through this film, really nice people. You know what I'm saying? It's just the mantra is very turned up. Like, it's like, we got to be buff, we got to be strong, you got to be. And I personally am like, okay, I don't need that, you know. But go ahead.
I want to go back to a little bit about your work and what you do, because the whole fitness thing is a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I was genuinely curious. When it comes to your work, what specific, if is there any challenges or anything that, like, when you're doing editing and when you're doing your work and when you're doing Bleedingham and you're planning all these events and you're coming up with it, what are some of the challenges that you encounter, and I guess how do you overcome when those challenges come?
Whew, that's a good one. The biggest challenge is always time, and time versus quality. Have you ever heard of that triangle? Is like, you can have something fast, and you can have something with quality, but it can't be cheap. Or you can have something cheap with quality, but it can't be fast. Something's like the triangle. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So like, something is always compromised in the mix, right? Right. Excuse me. With editing, it's time and quality and fastness. It's like, if the edit is sloppy, then your either head editor or producer or executive producer will send this back to you, be like, it's garbage. And that, plus you've just wasted the company's time. See what I'm saying? So like, for the film festival, there's only so many days and so much stuff that has to be prepped for social media, and it has to look coherent. You see what I'm saying? So it's this weird thing where everything in the triangle has to be hit, and that's a challenge. So the best thing I can do for that is the caffeine, and then going back to knowing when to rest. Because when you go in, you're doing 12-hour days, 10-hour days, you got to realize that, you know, probably after those 8 hours, the last 4 hours aren't going to be as great as those initial hours. You know what I'm saying?
Less quality.
Right. And so you have to give yourself that space in between that and the next work day, you know. And not, I don't mean space, but, well, I need to check social media, man. I got to finish this video game. I got to call my home. No, man, you need to empty your head. Empty your head, like
physically
and take care
step
of your
away.
body. Yes, and just do what you can to keep the blood pressure low, the stress level low, any anxieties about the project that might raise. You know, just take time to realize that the most important thing you can do is exist and be there for, you know, the people you love. You know what I'm saying? And if you fall prey to that and don't handle that, then you're not going to be any good to the people you love, because you're just a mess, right? You know, so that's how I would say. It's just like, you have to give yourself. It just circles back to what you're saying. As a young, and you're young, not young like super young, but I mean, like, you have a lot of more energy, right? Yeah. Than like a cat that's pushing 47, right? So it's like, if you start this practice now, and everything starts building up, and you know, you've got a very bright future ahead of you. Of course, we've talked at length of where you're going and stuff, and I mean, I'm like, wow, that's amazing, and it's great to see. But yeah, just remember to rest, man, because if not, you're not going to be any good to anybody. You know what I'm saying? And just be present in the moment. There's like that Zen saying that's like, if you're driving, drive. Don't let your head be in other places. If you're working on the edit, Be in the edit. Be in the story. Don't be anywhere else. Don't try to double dip and do two things at once or anything like that. Get through that. Right. A lot space. Get up. Make sure you get up and stretch. In a sedentary way, because
yeah, you gotta feel good.
Man, in the pandemic, I swelled up to like 400 pounds editing.
Wow.
Because all I was doing was eating takeout. I was working on a TV show at the time called Car Issues on Motor Trend, and the story's great. It's like super fun. The guy's going around picking up cars and doing all this wacky stuff with him, and like you're a part of it. You're part of the team, but like the team doesn't say, "Hey, man, go out there and like take a salt bath or get a walk in." You know what I'm saying? Because they need to do that for themselves too. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's like in the same thing where like the story becomes the most important thing. But when you step away, refresh yourself, or even bring in a different set of eyes if you're like working on something that you're like lead of, and you've been like, let's say I edited a promo recently, the one you see going around for Bleedingham. Right. By bringing in a separate set of eyes, that's like, oh, that's there. There's a term in film called "you got to kill your babies," and what that means is, let's say you shot a short film, right? And it took 20 takes to get that shot. Your audience don't know that, and it's not their responsibility to feel that because you want to keep this take because it took 20 takes. If it's a garbage take, it's got to go because the audience doesn't know what happened that day on set. They don't understand the history of it. They're just there for the story. You see what I'm saying? And so if you shoot something or write something, sometimes it's recommended that you don't edit it because you're going to want to keep all your stuff that's in there, and it ends up being something that's understandable to you, but not to everybody else, man. So you got to make sure to kill your darlings. I don't want to keep saying kill your babies on here, but it's that fresh set of eyes can help you and perceive more than what you would alone because you've already put, like I was saying, once you're in there focused, you have the blinders on, man. Absolutely. So at some point when it's still a wall in front of you now, it's time to get a different set of eyes on it. You know what I'm saying? So that would be my advice.
Word. Going forward, from today, I mean, a lot of events coming this month, but just moving forward with your work, I guess, do you have any like dreams or any aspirations for where you want to see your work take place, or do you feel like you've kind of hit your plateau right now?
No. So Bleedingham is special to me, right? Over the years, there's been like a core set of filmmakers that submit pretty much every year, and we're all great friends and family. And like our commitment to our film community, I think what makes Bleedingham work, at least for me, it works for myself, my wife, and Langley, who are the core components of Bleedingham, right? We want to give an opportunity and provide a space for people to grow, and so. Bleedingham does that because what happens is you go in a gentle competition. You can receive accolades from your peers. Right. You network. You kind of see what the scene is, right? And then you move accordingly, right? But recently, like a couple of years back, right before the pandemic, because the pandemic kind of threw us all for a loop, right? We had like maybe 25 filmmakers together, and we wanted to make an anthology. To get just on streaming. No big thing. And no, we're not trying to make $1 million.
What is an anthology?
An anthology is a collection of stories.
Okay.
And so like it's a no-brainer that if you run a horror film festival that actually specializes in short films, that after a while you're kind of like, we want to share what Bleedingham does with the masses. So we all met right before the pandemic, and we were all on track to make this anthology film, right? But then the pandemic happened, and our last part was this whole like the idea of a wraparound. You know what a wraparound is?
No, what is it?
So within an anthology, there's like a common thread. Like, let's see. Have you ever seen the movie called The Red Violin?
No.
Well, this is a great movie where like this violin passes from hand to hand, and each hand is a different story, right? But that's the wrapping element right there, the middle of the thing, right? And it's like we didn't have a great wrapping element at the time, and we were kind of overcomplicating it. But I recently was meeting with another filmmaker, and that filmmaker had said something that was like the eureka moment, right? And they were like, hey, Gary, man, why don't you just have Langley, which is my festival partner along with Michelle and co-founder. I was like, why don't you just have Langley dress as Uncle Bloody Joe again like he did in the It's Alive series? And the It's Alive series was a Universal Monsters series at the Pickford that we did during the pandemic so nobody could go to the theater. But we went in the theater and just recorded him giving the history of these old Universal films right before they started. They watched this little companion piece, and it just became simple as day. It's like, oh, like a kind of a Crypt Keeper thing. You know what I'm saying? Or like how like the Crypt Keeper comes, now there's a tail. Well, we have a character called Bloody who is like this ghoulish filmmaker, and then the variation of him is Uncle Bloody Joe. And so we've just decided to use him as the wraparound character to introduce the filmmakers. Wow. And now We have 10 filmmakers committed, and directly after Bleedingham, we're going to all start and we'll help each other make these films, and then we'll compile it into an anthology and then seek distribution.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's, and that was the dream in the first place, right? It was just to get a movie out there, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't, where I'm at right now in work, I love working locally in community and stuff. And there's always going to be enough visual work for people. I'm not always, but I mean, like, I feel comfortable enough in my ways as a post-production specialist and a producer that there'll be, where there's a means, there's a way, right?
Absolutely.
But if I was to have a dream, it would be to get a movie out, you know? Like, before I go, I want to get one horror narrative feature.
An alien movie?
Maybe, yeah. And of course, you know, it's like I would love to have a black protagonist, you know what I'm saying? And I already have like the workings for that part. But the anthology, it's like I don't mean to be like it's low-hanging fruit, because it's not. It's actually a lot of work. But what it is we've ran a horror festival for 13 years. We know a lot of short-form people. This is in front of you right here. So we're going to do an anthology first before we explore the entire feature.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah,
well, Gary, man, we are at the point of the podcast that I like to call the deep end.
Okay.
And this is at the point where I ask the last question, which is the advice question.
Okay.
So let's say there's someone who is an upcoming, has aspirations to become a video editor, a videographer, an actor, a producer, go Hollywood, whatever it is at any level. What advice would you give to that person today, aspiring to do that?
Well, be ready to work. Be ready to work. There's an old saying that says, be careful of the toes that you step on, because they could be connected to the ass you're kissing tomorrow. Or the toes you step on today could be connected to the ass you have to kiss tomorrow. So treat everybody fairly, you know, with respect. Try to understand, like, how do I put this? Your bullshitometer has to be pretty high, right? You have to be aware of what, if it doesn't feel right for you, don't pursue it. Don't, you know, go and pursue what makes you happy. You know what I'm saying? If you're starting out as like a low, like, remember in the 90s when like man, you know, because you're very young. Sorry, you were born.
Yeah, I was born.
Okay, when I was a kid, man, it was kind of like this whole backpack rapper thing. Master P had just put out like a whole bunch of albums, and like everybody was starting a production company, right? And I kind of feel like it's like that in this wonderful time with film. And I'm so elated to see that there's so many, like, on social media, black filmmaking groups and people that are kind of starting their journey with like a DSLR camera and a script, man. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, stay with that, build on that, and keep learning, you know? And like, it's amazing, man. Like you said, the internet is a dual-edged sword. A lot of stuff that is gatekept by, and I'm not just going to say by whites, I'm just going to say by the filmmaking industry. A lot of the gatekeeping, you can bypass that by looking at tutorials, LinkedIn, YouTube, that kind of stuff, and get the basics and form your own workflow. And then when you form that workflow, start it on your own and let people see what you're doing. Because I've learned that it's easier to get help with a project when you're already in motion. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, instead of sitting at the idea stage, if other people see you, no matter like what color it is, if they're interested in going in the same direction, then they'll help you. And expect to help other people too. You know, because like Bellingham works on a lot of like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine kind of thing. So like, for instance, like I have a shooter and a director that will come out, and I can do those things myself. But since I specialize in producing and editing, and, you know, of course there's going to be people that are better than you at it, right?
Sure.
So, you know, it's like, okay, well, I'll rent you some gear for cheap on the meantime, that kind of thing. You know, like, be able to have these negotiations ready so that you can do that. And don't compromise your vision, but, you know, it will change as you see what you have fit. And there's this thing in creative writing that says, like, when you write something, write like you don't have a budget. You know what I'm saying? But if you're trying to make something on your, I believe like 50% in that and 50% look at what you have to work with, and then see what you can do with those elements as well. You know what I'm saying? So I would just say, just be ready to work and be ready to look people in their eyes and not be afraid to ask for stuff. I mean, something that I've had to unlearn was kind of like talking to, quote unquote, I don't want to say white folks, but like, you know, people with more affluence than I to ask for something. And what I've learned from these people is they do stuff and apologize later. They're like, well, let's just get it done and then apologize for it afterwards. And I'm like, I like that sort of, you know, but there has to be kind of nuances around that as well, right? You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like that comes with a sense of entitlement and stuff, right? But like, that's what's getting these cats a little bit ahead, is that they're just diving in, ready to go. You know what I mean? And so I feel like we have to have a little bit of that too.
Yeah.
A little bit of just, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do this anyway, whether you like it or not. You can get on board, you know, and it's happening. So like I'm putting it in motion. And once, like I said, once you have the ball rolling, it'll come. People will see it. The momentum will build. And I truly started from like, I used to want to be a gangster rapper when I was a kid, right?
Really?
Like, I mean, literally, I was terrible, man. You know what I mean? And then I had this band, and I kind of meandered through my early 20s, just like, what am I doing now? Right. And I've never thought that I would just be into filmmaking and be a part of a strong film community. You know what I'm saying? So like, the help is out there. You know, as long as you're genuine in your intent and you stick to your guns about where you're trying to go with this, you know?
Yeah.
But always, you know, try to be polite about it, you know, like pretty nice about stuff, and you know, become approachable, because this is how, with the interpersonal relationships you build, like going to college for you, was it valuable? Did you feel like you built up a few interpersonal relationships?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, it's the same way in the film community. You know what I'm saying? You'll earn your stripes alongside other people, kind of thing. And then eventually you just kind of end up in your own zone. And then you end up in a position where you can help people here. Right. You see what I'm saying? Right. Or you're not just in Bellingham, but wherever you're at, right? So you just have to remember that position is there. You just have to work to it, man. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I never thought I would get to that, but I didn't really think about it. It was just kind of like what I wanted to do.
Gotcha.
You know, and then all of a sudden we're here.
Yeah.
So just keep doing what you want to do, but just be mindful of everything around you, you know?
Word.
Yeah. So.
Word. What a way to end it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Gary, thank you so much.
No problem,
for
man.
all
Thanks
that wisdom. Oh my gosh, so many gems, so much stuff we covered. So
yeah, I hope I didn't just like caffeinated chat my way through this.
No, absolutely. But before I close, is there anything that you want? Because I know we've done shout outs, but if any events, anything that you want to shout out before we close?
Yeah, I would say come to Bleedingham. Look us up at bleedingham.com. Yes, it definitely sounds like Bleedingham, but it's a play on Bellingham. Also, if you're in Bellingham, check out the Pickford Film Center. We have a vibrant film community that's amazing. And if you're going to get a haircut, go to Busy Bees.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Shout out Bernard. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Bernard.
Appreciate it. Well, hope y'all enjoyed this awesome episode. As usual, check out the description down below to check out all my links to all my other platforms. And if you're able to, definitely hit up the donation links too to keep supporting me.
Yes,
and stay tuned for more awesome episodes as season 5 rolls on. Until next time, guys.
Take it easy.
Peace. What is up, y'all? Thank you so much for tuning in to that episode. Make sure to click the subscribe, follow button, as well as the bell to get notified on all my new content that is coming out every Wednesday and every other day. And make sure to click that link in the description down below to get access to all my socials and any other platforms that I have my podcast on. And until next time, y'all, peace.